morning. I'm Reverend Diana Smith, the minister of the Unitarian Universalist Society, and it is wonderful to be with you all this morning. In these times of change, it is so important to be together, to come together as a spiritual community, to gain the sustenance that we each and all need, and to help nourish each other. As members of a covenantal faith that expresses our core value of love through how we agree to be together, it is good to come together and to affirm that even when we cannot yet all be together in body, this congregation remains strong and connected. To affirm that we have faith and hope in this congregation, in each other, and in the ways we continue to grow together during the challenges of life. And to affirm that wherever any of us is on our life's journey, whether we come to worship with joy in our hearts, weighted with burdens, in need of rest, or searching for others to engage in the struggle with us, we are glad, and this community is glad that we are here. Today, Dan Gall is worship associate, Emma Barnum, Michael Honey-Arsment, and Russ Lint are running our AV and our sound systems, and we will be celebrating what it means to open to joy. And so as we begin our service, I share these words from the Reverend Gretchen Haley, who writes, "Come in, all who long to know how to love the world, how to keep eyes open, how to keep hands unclenched, arms wide, breathing deeply in and out. This is a time to practice, because there is still so much good and beauty and joy, but it can be hard to keep telling this tale with all the news, and the wind and the rain and the trembling earth. Who wants to love this life anyway? Come in, all who teeter on this edge of cynicism, brokenhearted and trying to remember laughter and kindness, and the chance to be alive in these days when so much is at stake. In this place, we remind each other why we persist, giving each other courage to take this path that is not always easy, to keep practicing this love that cannot, will not let us go, and still calls us on. Come, let us worship together." And now, we'll join our voices together in hymn number 410, Surprised by Joy. If you're at UUS, please sing softly into your mask, hum, or move your hands or body with the music. You may rise in body or in spirit. If you're at home, please feel free to sing as loudly as you would like.
Everybody. As Unitarian Universalists, we light a flame within a chalice as a symbol of sanctuary and safety to unite us in worship and to remind us of our ongoing search for the light of truth. As we say our chalice lighting words, if you are on Zoom, please feel free to use the chat to let us know that your chalice is lit. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the wonder and mystery of this great gift. So let us now kindle the flame of our liberal religious heritage and renew our covenant of mutual love and care. Our doctrine. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, and to serve those in need. This we covenant with one and one another. Each week, when we light our candle for justice and healing, we hold space in our understanding of interdependence, that our liberation is bound up with every other person's liberation, that our feelings of rage and heartbreak over the ongoing pandemics of illness and racism, the devastation of climate chaos, and the waves of trauma washing over our world. We light this candle to help us hold space together for processing what is happening in our lives and in our world, and to remind ourselves that together we are creating resilience and hope. We light this candle that we may not be numbed or lost to injustice, devastation, illness, trauma, but rather find strength, courage, and love together to continue engaging with the struggles for liberation, justice, and healing. Today, as we light this candle, we're particularly mindful of the victims, I guess, of the tornadoes and storms that have raged across the South and Midwest, and for all people who are experiencing what I call human-influenced climate disasters. After I light this candle, let's hold a time of silence to listen to our hearts and bodies and perhaps lift up our prayers.
The book that I'm reading for you today is called The Most Beautiful Thing, and it's a story about resilience and joy. And it was written by Kao Kalea Yang. My grandmother is so old. No one knows how old she is. Not me, not my big sister Dao, not our older cousin Lai. My father waits patiently when we try to guess her age. He is my grandma's 9th and youngest child, and even he does not know how old she is. We know that my grandma was born on the other side of the world, across a wide ocean. My grandma came from time and a place where creatures lurked in the jungles, waiting to chase unwary children. She told us that she once looked into the gleaming eyes of a tiger and felt its hot breath on her face. By the time I was born, my grandmother already had an old woman's face. Her skin was soft but dry like paper, and in her mouth was a single tooth. Grandma said, "It's the only thing standing strong in my mouth, this final tooth that my mother and my father gave to me. I asked to see a picture of her parents, and she said, Mine, they lived in a time long before the Hmong learned of such things as photographs. And she pointed to her heart, and she said, the only picture I have of them is here. The luckiest of the grandchildren got to help take care of Grandma. Lei got to wash Grandma's clothes by hand at the bathroom sink with sweet-smelling pink soap. Dao got to wash Grandma's soft brown bath in the bathtub with a soapy cloth. And me, I got to clip her fingernails and toenails while Grandma sat on her favorite stool in the light from the window. I can still feel the roughness of Grandma's heels in my hand, the thickness of her toenails in between my fingers. I can see the bottoms of her feet, thick and brown and broken, deep cracks filled with dirt from long ago and far away. Grandma told me that her mother and father died when she was a little girl. And Grandma was just a child herself, but she had to take care of her 2 younger brothers and baby sister. I looked up at my grandma from the place where I sat at her feet, and I asked her, how did you get food for them? And Grandma said, I didn't find enough food. We lived always with hunger eating us on the inside. All my life with her, even with her 1 tooth, Grandma never said no when we offered her something to eat. The ice cream truck was singing its song from down the street. I looked underneath the couch for quarters, and there were none. So I got ice cubes from the freezer. I offered one to Grandma in my red plastic cup, and she smiled at me. When I wanted a new dress to wear on the first day of 3rd grade, my mother said she did not have enough money. She found some nickels and a dime in her purse and offered them to me. I bought hard peppermint candies from the neighborhood grocery store at the corner of our block, and when I got home, I offered one to Grandma in the palm of my hand, and she smiled at me. At the round table with its shaky legs, I used my spoon to mix and mix in the center soup bowl that we all shared. There were no pieces of meat, only bones and soft greens. And my father said, the price of meat is too expensive at the market, Mine. I found a thick chunk of bone and offered it to Grandma on my spoon, and she smiled at me. But we had plenty of meat when we celebrated Hmong New Year with our aunts, uncles, and cousins. The old table was heavy with whole boiled chickens, more than our family could ever eat. After dinner, our bellies full, my cousins and I sat on the carpet around Grandma as she told us stories. And she always began, it was a long time ago, and I was just a girl. On a cold day when the snow blew onto the window panes and the light was dim, I asked Grandma about the dirt in her feet. She told me she didn't have shoes after her mother and father died. She went shoeless to the mountains to tend to the family field. She ventured into the jungle to look for wild roots, bamboo shoots, and edible mushrooms. And one day, she was chased by a tiger. As she fled, her bare feet broke open on the fallen branches, and she still ran, blood and dirt mixing into clay with each step. I squeezed her feet in my arms and pulled them close to my heart, a hug for the hard road she walked to get to me. Each year, cutting my grandma's nails went faster because I grew stronger and bigger and more able. And each year, Grandma's feet felt smaller and smaller in my hands and my lap. Her stories, too, slowed with the passing years. The pauses between her words grew very long. Sometimes, as Grandma was looking for the words she'd lost to the years, I grew distracted from my task, looking at the toys on the floor that needed to be picked up, the unfinished schoolwork, the younger children who needed to be bathed. Her deep, even breathing would call me back to the moment, only to find her eyes closed in sleep, one hand braced against the window to cradle her head. I grew unhappy with our life. I was tired of getting ice cubes from the freezer when I wanted ice cream. I was tired of not getting the new dress for school. I was tired of gnawing on the bone in the soup when I wanted meat for myself and my grandma. And one evening, I studied my face in the bathroom mirror, wishing my teeth were straight. I came out of the bathroom and said, "Mom and Dad, I want braces. Can I have them?" My mother looked up from nursing my baby sister and said, "We don't have any money. Maybe next year." My father looked up from my toddler sister who was bouncing on his legs and said, "I wish we could get you braces, Minai, but we can't right now." My grandmother looked up from her special stool by the big window. "Kalia," she said, "look at me." I turned to her in the glow of the early evening. The sun was low in the sky, and its golden light fell on her face. And Grandma asked, "Is my smile not beautiful?" In that moment, I could see all the times my grandmother had smiled at me. I could taste the cold ice cubes that melted summer's heat from our tongues, the sweetness of the hard peppermint candies, and the deep flavors of the bone broth in the bowls of boiled greens. And even now, I can still see my grandma's single tooth, white against the shadows, standing tall in her open mouth. And her smile was the most beautiful thing. So today, in the fellowship hall, we have a few kids, which is fabulous. And when we're done with worship, if you want to pop over and make a small, little, crafty, beautiful thing that you can share with someone else, you are more than welcome to do so. There's no rhyme or reason to our craft this week. I just want us to get together and create something beautiful and keep it for ourselves or share it with someone else. So, thank you.
Our reading today is "Joy is Hard" by the Reverend Joe Cherry. Joy is hard. Joy requires us to feel safe enough. To be safe enough to open to vulnerability. To feel joy, you must be brave. Joy walks into a room after the space has been cleared of shame, cleared of doubt, cleared of self-recrimination. Joy is hard. Joy is hard. And joy is worth the hard work of preparation, preparing oneself and setting down all defenses. All shoulds and could-haves, all should not haves and might haves. Joy is worth the work. You are worth the work. You can start small. The simple pleasure of your favorite tea, the grand freedom of a full belly laugh. Invite joy to be your companion.
one morning recently, as I took my dog for his morning walk, I was noticing, attending to the beauty of the morning, the growing light and colors of sunrise, the crispness of the air, the happiness and intensity of the dog. I think you know that posture. And then suddenly, glory surrounded me. A large flock of small songbirds took flight just ahead of me. They swirled up into the sky overhead, surrounding me with a feeling of movement and flight, the sounds and the swirling, ever-changing sights of murmuration. The moment was wonder and joy and delight, and I let it flow into me and feed me. As Joe Cherry wrote in the poem that Dan just read, joy is hard, the vulnerability in the midst of change and challenge and darkness, but it's also simple, and it helps us do the work of survival, the work of change, the work of making the world live. As writer, doula, and radical change agent, Adrienne Marie Brown writes in her book, Pleasure Activism, pleasure reminds us to enjoy being alive and on purpose. Pleasure, embodied, connected pleasure, is one of the ways we know when we are free, that we are always free, that we always have the power to co-create the world. Pleasure helps us move through the times that are unfair, through grief and loneliness, through terror of genocide, or days when the demands are just overwhelming. Pleasure heals the places where our hearts and spirit get wounded. Pleasure reminds us that even in the dark, we are alive. Pleasure is a medicine for the suffering that is absolutely promised in life. Pleasure is the point. Feeling good is not frivolous, it is freedom. There end her words. Feeling good is not frivolous, it is freedom. It heals our wounds, even as we move out of the midst of our wounds to feel it. It is a wonder how we do this, both alone and together, how we open to joy. It is something that we can grow and cultivate even as we engage in the radical act of joy. Joy for itself and joy as an act of resistance. For joy is resistance. Resistance to the distrust and anger that infects so much, to the white supremacy culture that pervades our world, to the unhappiness of our wider culture. And it is something that we can grow, that we can cultivate with attention, openness, and sometimes community. One of my favorite stories about cultivating joy as resistance comes from the renowned poet Maya Angelou, who turned 40 on April 4th, 1968. She had planned a big party in Harlem with many of the day's Black intellectual elite among the guests. However, history had other ideas. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's assassination sent Angelou into a weeks-long depression. It was fellow writer James Baldwin who helped her dig out of it. Angelou recalls Baldwin's assistance in her book, A Song Flung Up to Heaven, where she writes that laughter and ancestral guidance got her through. She says, "There was very little serious conversation. The times were so solemn and the daily news so somber that we snatched the mirth from unlikely places and gave servings of it to one another with both hands. I told Jimmy I was so glad to laugh. Jimmy said, 'We survived slavery. You know how we survived? We put surviving into our poems and into our songs. We put it into our folk tales. We survived dancing in Congo Square in New Orleans and put it in our pots when we cooked pinto beans. We knew if we wanted to survive, we had better lift our own spirits. So we laughed whenever we got a chance.'" There in her words. And his words, James Baldwin's, "If we want to survive, we had better lift our own spirits." Joy comes in many shapes, but at its heart, it's often a quality of heart or spirit that comes from being in relationship with the present moment. When we bring our awareness to the here and now, we are more likely to encounter and fully experience joy. We live in a time and a place where unhappiness are epidemic. This was the case well before the pandemic, and as we well know, for many of us, the pandemic has increased stress and isolation, has brought us new challenges, often just when we thought we had finally had things figured out, and has brought illness, terrible loss, worry, and overwhelm. We are all the more isolated and unhappy as a culture now, and that keeps us from some of the very things, from some of the communal care and joy that we need to survive and thrive and find our ways forward as communities, as a country, as a world. Joy does not mean that difficulty disappears, but it is a way of healing and holding space for change. It is a way of helping birth the new realities that we need. As Kelly McGonigal writes in How to Overcome Stress by Seeing Other People's Joy in Greater Good magazine, it turns out that our brains actually resonate with positive emotions, not just negative ones. When you witness another's good fortune, it can activate our brain's reward systems. This kind of contagious happiness can be an important source of well-being. Positive empathy doesn't just make you feel good, it can also inspire you to do good. Feeling empathic joy is actually associated with a stronger desire to help others thrive and a greater willingness to take action to do so. Positive empathy also enhances that warm glow that you feel from helping others, making compassion that much more sustainable. And the good news is that we can cultivate space for more joy to appear and grow. And it's not that hard. It's rather a practice and a pattern, a turning of the mind and of the heart. Right now, I've just begun taking Yale's free online Science of Well-Being class to help myself cultivate this space, this openness on a regular basis, because it is a practice, right? As we heard in Joe Cherry's poem, we can start small. The simple pleasure of your favorite tea, the grand freedom of a full belly laugh, we can invite joy to be our companion. A couple days ago, walking my dog in the morning with a friend and her dog, and as we walked along, chatting, I was lost in trying to sort through the problems that we were discussing. And as we walked, she suddenly stopped us. I had been so lost in thought and conversation, I hadn't noticed anything, but she told me to look at the sky and the trees, and how the trees were catching the light, glowing. I did. A moment so like and yet so different from when that murmuration surrounded me. I hadn't been present, but when I did, together we sank into the moment in the glory of it. Sometimes we all need help noticing and welcoming the possibility of joy into our lives. Well, just the day before I'd gotten lost in wonder of birds flying up around me, that day I needed help being called into the present and the beauty. And that's okay. None of us can do this alone, right? Our capacity for opening to joy is something that can be, that needs to be cultivated. And as we do so, it grows, and as it grows, our happiness, our joy, individual and communal, and our capacity to cultivate and open to more joy, they grow too. Such is the wonder of communal care. Such is the wonder of practice. We can catch joy by watching a child or an animal play, by watching an athlete or an artist play, by helping someone celebrate their happiness, by witnessing or celebrating the good in others, by letting someone do something nice for you, by using your strengths in new ways, or simply by being present. And so as we move into this time, this next bit of time that we call our meditation, contemplation, and prayer, I'm going to invite people, all of us, whether you are here in the sanctuary or at home, into a practice of opening to joy. Alex will play here in the sanctuary. And I invite you to do something joyful. Listen to the music, doodle, color if you're here at UUS. As you just heard, we have all sorts of art supplies in the fellowship hall. You're welcome to go in there and use them or bring some of them in here. Gaze out the window, wondering, hoping to catch a glimpse of a hawk or some songbirds. If we're lucky, we might have deer. And so, I invite you into this practice of joy, of opening to it. And after the music ends, we will engage in a practice of sharing. Amen and blessed, blessed be.
Let there be light. Let there be understanding. Let all the nations gather. Let them be face to face. Open our lips, open our minds to ponder, open the door of concord, opening into grace. Perish the sword, perish the angry judgment, perish the bombs and hunger, perish the fight for gain. Let there be light. Open our hearts to wonder. Perish the way of terror. Hallow the world we've made.
Now I'd like to invite everyone to spend a couple minutes sharing with the person next to you or in chat if you're online. what sparked joy, what that experience was like for you. And then, after a couple moments, I'm going to call you all back, and I am going to invite you to share some of those things. Folks online, I'm going to read some of the things that you're putting in the chat out loud, and folks here at UUS, I'm going to invite you to call out a few things. So, please, take a couple minutes to share with someone else what sparked joy just now or generally. I love those sounds of vibrant sharing. Folks online, I don't know if you could hear that. I've been watching your texts pour in. And I'm going to start sharing some of these. I also am hoping some folks here might want to shout out a few things that sparked a joy for you. So some things that I'm seeing here are the beautiful thing that Val and John received from Allison and Julian, a beautiful colored version of our principles. My cat right now is having, my joy right now is having my cat sitting on my lap from someone at home. And we also have the dog's contented snoring on the couch from folks at home. Looking out my window at the trees and sky. Feel free here if there's something to shout it out, and I'll repeat it so folks at home can hear too. Anything from here? Anybody wants to share?
Sunshine.
Sunshine, coloring. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So walking and looking at the tops of the trees and the sky. We have someone who is appreciating the music. Sue, what was that? Yeah. So music here, music last night at the choir concert. Kara. Yes, dancing and watching you dance, watching you move to the music, enjoying that. That was meaningful. Yes.
It was just like looking at the sunlight on that bench over there. And it was so beautiful. And it looked like it was inviting people to talk.
So folks online, someone here was enjoying looking out the window, watching the sun on a bench and thinking how inviting it seemed. And folks here, someone online was looking out the windows, the sun shining, blue sky and wind gently blowing the prairie grasses. So many things that are sparking joy for us here and there. Someone online said, I have an orange front door that faces east. She stood between it and her screen door and soaked up the sun and the heat, both from the east and from the orange door. Heavenly. Vicky. Yeah, walking in the door here and seeing faces of people she hasn't seen for so long. The people we love spark joy. Online we have someone's 4-year-old son's laugh reconnects him with pure joy. There was somebody who, I lost it now, but I saw earlier, so I may get this slightly wrong. Their grandson asked for her to send bugs for his dead bug collection, bugs from Iowa. That's a joy. so many things that are sparking joy, and what a celebration, what a joy to hear them. Folks who are online, I invite you to check out each other's. If you're here, I hope you get a chance to look at some of these later, because these are wonderful. Thank you for sharing your joy. It is a gift. And now Dan will tell us about our offering.
Hard to drag myself away from my coloring. How we give, what we do with our lives, our time, and our resources is a reflection of our values, and perhaps a way to spread some joy. In response to the abundance we are blessed with, every week this congregation donates generously to organizations in our community whose work aligns with our values and principles. Our community partner agency this month is the Iowa Free Dental Clinic. We're kind of going back to the smile thing earlier as well. This is a very unified service today. The Free Dental Clinic's mission is to provide the widest access to dental services possible to people in the Iowa City and surrounding communities who would not otherwise have access to care. Volunteer dentists, dental students, dental hygienists, and dental hygiene students provide services to hundreds of patients each year, many of whom are children. On the screens, you will see instructions for how to give online, or you may take this time to write a check and address an envelope to UUS to be put in the mail. If you're attending this service here in the sanctuary, you can give online, or there is a basket for checks in the atrium. The usher can help you find it after the service. You may assist our community partner, contribute to the congregation to provide additional support for our operating expenses, or contribute towards your pledge. The offering is a sign of commitment to this free congregation, which is completely supported by the voluntary generosity of all who join with us. As we give and receive the offering, may we be transformed by our giving, and may the world be transformed by our gifts.
Gaudeamus, Gaudeamus, Gaudeamus hodie, Gaudeamus, Gaudeamus hodie. Come rejoicing, come rejoicing, come rejoicing life today. Come rejoicing life today. Gaudeamus, Gaudeamus, Gaudeamus hodie, Gaudeamus, Gaudeamus hodie.
Morning. My name is Pete Brokaw, and I'm here as part of the Stewardship Committee. You probably know that the Stewardship Committee works on the pledge campaign, the annual campaign, and this is, I hold in my hand, as Johnny Carson would say, I hold in my hand the final report. A couple of you are old enough to remember Johnny Carson. I know that. I'm not going to say who. Before we get to the campaign goal, there's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes, and the Board of Trustees and the Finance Committee work on talking to the people in the congregation and UUS staff to determine the needs for the upcoming year. And that's how we set, in the Reader's Digest version, how we set the budget for the upcoming year. a portion of the dividends from the General Endowment Fund and the proceeds from the Treats and Talent auction, which we just held, are a big help in offsetting the budget. But the majority of meeting the budget needs comes from pledges and gifts from the congregation. It takes a village to support this village, and so when the goal is set, I'm always a little nervous about, can we possibly meet another year of the work that needs to be done? And the goal this year was for $420,000 from the pledge campaign, and including the 3 challenge pledges that we had, we have raised approximately $412,572.16. So that means we are more than 98% to meeting our goal. Thank you to everybody who has pledged. And if making a pledge is still on your to-do list, don't fear, there is still time. We do have a 4th pledge challenge that if we can get to $419,000, this donor will contribute another $1,000 to put us over the top. We still need to raise approximately $6,427.84 before we can take advantage of that challenge. So please, if you can help, that would be much appreciated. And again, I want to thank all of you for all that you do throughout the year to support this village. Thanks.
Closing words, nurturing gratitude and how we understand and express interdependence is part of how we live into our Unitarian Universalist faith. May what has been shared today help us more fully affirm our interconnection and live into love and justice. Immediately after the service, we will have time for all to join in conversation and community and perhaps share some joy. Whether you're online or in the sanctuary, after the service, a host will explain the process for that location. If you're at UUS, please join us in the fellowship hall to engage with the all ages activity that Marcia explained earlier. And now, to close our service today, we will sing hymn 311, Let It Be a Dance.
And we'll also have, after the service, we'll also have, before we sing Let It Be a Dance, after the service, we're also going to have a informational discussion about the budget, both here and online. So, yeah, thanks.
You bet. If you're at UUS, please sing softly into your mask, hum or move your hands and body with the music. If you're at home, as usual, sing as loudly as you'd like. We'd like to hear you from here in the UUS. Let it be a dance.
Let a time to cry. Take it as it passes by. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you. Through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Morning star comes out at night. Without the dark there is no light. Nothing's wrong and nothing's right. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. In the sunshine let it rain. Share the joy, share the pain. And round we go again. Let it be a dance.
In the words for extinguishing the chalice, we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. All these we carry in our hearts and in our minds until we are together again.
As we head out into the world this week, may we continue cultivating joy in ways that are small and ways that are large. May we continue opening to it and helping our companions catch joy too. And go in peace, love, and justice, today and all days, living love ever more fully and fiercely into the world. Amen and blessed, blessed be. And now, as the choral benediction plays, we invite you to sing along with it, either here or at home.